Hey folks, welcome to Life with Nick, a podcast built around real conversations with everyday people. Here we give ordinary people uncommon attention because behind every person is a story, a struggle, a perspective, and a lesson that deserves to be heard. Thanks for living a little life with me. Now, today's guest is Tony Berry. Tony and I have a sit-down conversation and a great podcast surrounding the very, very debatable and controversial and also amazing conversation around religion and spirituality. You'll find here that we don't necessarily come from one perspective or another, but we do take a very pragmatic approach to some things that we think are both really awesome about spirituality and religion, and some things that are questionable about spirituality and religion. And lastly, we do provide a third perspective that Tony and I both really believe in and think is a very compelling argument as to what spirituality and religion really might be. So let's get to the show. Welcome back to the Life with Nick podcast. Man, Tony Berry, give me some cheers,
Nicholas,
man.
Brother.
We're doing it.
Finally.
We are finally doing it.
I've been looking forward to it.
I am very much so too. So for those of are just tuning in, hello. We're doing a video podcast here, having a little bit of fun in Tony's basement. But yeah, man, we talked about this for a while, and I'm just so happy that we can get back in here and finally do this podcast because we got a lot of really, really fun things that we're going to discuss tonight. So I know we had, quite a bit of info, but you had mentioned that you were going to share something with me before we dove into everything.
Yes. If this is podcast 75, you are, I think ChatGPT, take it with a grain of salt, says you're within 1 to 3% of all podcasters.
No shit.
To make it this far, you're within the top at least 3%.
Hell yeah.
Most of them peter out. I think it said most of them peter out after 10 episodes. Most podcasters, once they hit 10, they're out. And most of them less than that.
Yeah.
So you're in an elite category.
Hey, let's go. And it deservedly so, because there are so many great guests that I've had, yourself included. And I was joking with you about this off air. Gosh, I just wish this I could be, a millionaire doing this. I freaking love podcasting. I think I was made to do it. I don't know.
Well, you're doing it. I know the thing I noticed, I haven't listened to all your podcasts, but I've listened to a good amount of them. And the thing I realized is you're not doing it with, how do I want to say, any sort of agenda. You're trying to provide value to your listeners, give them good takeaways, good keys. Being in the real estate industry, there's a handful of people that start podcasts, and you can kind of just tell, they have an agenda, they're trying to get more business or kind of validate themselves, which is not wrong, but I like your podcast because you're just you're talking to people, you're trying to talk to interesting people that can give people motivation and value through their everyday life. So
yeah,
got a lot of respect for it.
Appreciate that, man.
Yeah, of course.
And to have a guest on that has followed me, supported me, and just good feedback. Sometimes people don't give me feedback, and that's a little bit annoying because I want to get better at this thing,
Well, the thing I've told you this before, if I was critical, I don't hear from you much. You're really, I was legitimately impressed, the conversations that you have, you're really, really articulate. You can, the questions to ask, the questions kind of flow from the conversation. You're a good conversationalist.
Well, thank you, man. I appreciate it.
Skill. Yeah.
We're going to tap into that here today because in the past, I have brought guests on to discuss their particular industry.
Yep.
This podcast is not that, though.
No.
This podcast is about diving into some really fun topics of conversation and challenging. And I just want everyone to listen to this with an open mind because we're two guys just shooting the shit, and we're sharing what we understand out of this world. And there's some other things that we're going to touch on too. So for anyone listening, just chill out. Don't get all your panties in a bunch. We're just having a good time here, shooting it up.
Talking shit.
So where I want to begin, Tony, is a conversation that we've on purposely held off until basically right now.
Yeah.
It's a shared appreciation for us to understand this human experience. And this particular subject that we're going to talk about is spirituality and religion.
Yes.
So again, it can be viewed as controversial. I don't think it is, because everyone in some ways is trying to find what that means to them,
Mhm.
and it affects every person.
Mhm.
So I don't think one can say that it is conspiratorial in nature. However, again, we're going to have an open dialogue here. So just give me a little bit of a background on where you came up as far as your spiritual upbringing.
Sure.
And then I know we're going to be diving into
Mhm.
questions
Yeah,
and thoughts back
because
and
I'm going to
forth.
want to hear I want to hear the same from you.
Exactly. All
Yeah.
right, my friend.
Yeah. So my spiritual journey, I will say within the past couple of years is where I kind of really made some strides with it. And like growing up, I grew up Methodist. My parents took me to church every Sunday. Like I could probably count on my fingers how many Sundays I missed since I was like 18. Yeah. And like when I was real young, I was like, yeah, sure. Like, Jesus, like all this things, like walked on water, turned water into wine. Sure.
Why not?
Yeah. Right. And then as I got older, I was kind of like, I mean, really? Like, you guys all believe this? Like, this is fucking crazy to me. Like, it's just like, I don't know. My brain is just skeptical.
Sure.
Is the word I'll use.
And what age are you starting to find some of those, what I just say, like a natural rebel kind of questioning reality type of stuff?
Right. I gotta say my teenage years, probably like kind of younger to older teenage years, like sitting in church and like hearing these things. I was like, this just like, it doesn't seem possible. Like my logical objective brain, I was like, you're telling me this guy like came back to life and like
after the third day?
Yeah. And I'm like, it just doesn't, like, I don't know. I just couldn't land on it and say like, yep, for sure, I'm all in on it. Like I was very skeptical, to say the least.
Yeah.
Right. And so fast forward like my early 20s, everyone's early 20s is a fucking weird time for them, right?
Absolutely.
And so there's a period when I would consider myself an atheist. Like I thought we were just organic beings. Like we were born through organic means, we die, we go back into the earth, decompose, all that. And I thought that was it.
Yeah.
But
so real quick,
yeah.
what prompted you into that thought process to get into, like, we'll say loosely that you were an atheist?
Yep. Right.
Like, was there a particular event, or more so just in that stage of life where you're just like, there's no way?
More, yeah, kind of the latter there. Like I said, in my teen years, I was like, this shit is just too crazy for me. Like, I can't believe it. So like kind of as I evolved, I'm like, what's logical and makes sense to me is, we're born, we die, our body decomposes and goes back into the earth.
Sure.
Yep. But like my views have changed drastically since then, because like consciousness, I just couldn't account for that factor. I couldn't reconcile that.
It's a massive thing for your brain to try to wrap your head around,
Right. And like that, the atheist view, and like you're just an organic being, like it didn't fit.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, when you get introduced to a guy like Sam Harris, or get introduced to this idea of consciousness, it's the first time you have to look at yourself in a way that is, I am my own mind and whatnot, but I am a living, vibrant organism.
Right.
And so from there, the next logical question is, how did I get here and why am I here?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I'll turn it back over to you, but
yeah. No, so the beauty in having that period of my life when I was an atheist is it kind of wiped the slate clean. Like I was no longer, living life and having experiences and just looking at life through the eyes of a Christian.
Yeah.
So I think I was able to, have these experiences and have more of an open mind and an open heart to maybe there's a different answer.
Right.
Maybe there's multiple correct answers. Like, there's Christianity, there's Hindu, there's all of these different religions, Islam, Buddhism.
And why, right? Why is there so many different things?
Exactly.
And how can each one of your respective things be the right thing and everyone else be wrong?
That right there is where I really hopped off the Christianity bus.
Sure.
Because I've met some beautiful human beings where they weren't Christians. They were a different religion. And I was like, if you're going to sit there and tell me that this person isn't getting into like, Christians, they call it heaven. I think Muslims call it Yana, like Hindus call it moksha, but basically like this eternal resting place, or like this,
Yes.
just for ease of terms, just like this heaven, this afterlife. Right. And I was like, if those people aren't getting in there, like I have a real problem with that. And so, yeah, again, that's kind of where I hopped off the Christianity bus. I'm like, and I've had some wonderful conversations with wonderful people who are Christian, but it's their belief that they are the correct religion and everybody else is wrong.
Right.
And I can't reconcile that. Like, that's unacceptable to me.
Right. Well, and the thing where I came to my own path on this, and I know you wanted to return the favor, so I'll chime in a little bit.
Yeah, please.
So when I think about this, there is, and I grew up Catholic, and so again, those following Catholicism, like, more power to you if that's the thing that you love and that helps you sleep at night. That's totally fine. But when a human is sharing or telling these types of teachings in a way that prompts that they are the one that is the authoritative figure, I have a lot of problem with that.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm human,
mm-hmm.
they're human. Mm-hmm. There's degrees of self-mastery, so they could in some ways be much wiser than me and more steadfast than me, but they're still human. So if I'm learning something from another human and they're claiming that they're the all-powerful, almighty, all this stuff, that to me is not a fair way to distribute that information. Unless they come, and there are some pastors that do this, and I always tip my cap, and they recognize right away, hey, this is not me speaking. I'm a vessel for God's work. I'm trying to share what this teaching is in a persuasive way. And just, this is me sharing. I'm totally fine with that, because a lot of the Bible and a lot of other spiritual teachings require spiritual teachers. Mm-hmm. So like, that concept is totally fine for me. Mm-hmm. But when we're having to, in some ways, donate money or do these sacrificial things to this pastor, so to speak, what does the pastor have more power than we do when we're all on that spiritual journey? So this is where I begin to question a lot of myself, is like, it can't be a human to a human. Now, furthermore, I think what we're going to talk about is going to be really fun, because I think we're both in the same direction. And I think that we might be, I don't know, I'm just ready to explore.
Yeah.
So and I'll turn it back over to you.
Hey, we're having a conversation. No, I think you're spot on. So I want to put out there, for most religions, Christianity included, like 95% of it is awesome. Mm-hmm. Like, there's so many good things. Like, if people, like, if you're a hardcore Christian, like, I think that's a net positive. But it's the 5%, the small little chunk, that I really take issue with. And like, part of that 5% is like, we're right, everybody else is wrong. That's a big one. And yeah, I just really that's a big one I can't get over. But it creates a division, because if you're like, we're right, these people are wrong, like all these Hindus, these Muslims, these Buddhists, like whatever religion you practice, it creates division.
Right.
And I think that's kind of the corruption of man in the Bible and in kind of the New Testament texts, that it just creates division. Like, we're othering these people. And obviously, I mean, you're probably on the same page. Like, we think, organized religion, obviously it's fell under the influence of man's corruption, and, the fact that we're dividing ourselves and we're right, it gives them power to take action. Right. So if you look back at like the history of Christianity, like the Great Crusades, the Spanish Inquisition, like, these people cloaked themselves in religion and said, we're going to take your land, we're going to murder you. Like, you need to be our religion to be right.
And that's where we're coming in to this conversation. And that's why we're saying we need to be open-minded, because we lose sight of the history of all the things that have happened on behalf of religion or behalf of God. I will also interject here too, and this might come off a little bit harsh, but I think it's a great point. So I read a wonderful book called Sapiens, and Sapiens essentially is written on the history of mankind. How did we come to be? And he's writing it in a factual sense, saying
this is the evidence we have of humans at this period. This is what the evidence of the cultural or agricultural revolution, and then industrial revolution, yada, yada, yada. So one thing the author poses is that how are you able in these medieval times or even earlier to bring together a group of people, right? Because to survive, you need a tribe.
Yep.
And one way that they could get people together in communal outside of food and other things is if there is a God. Then you come together to praise to the God.
Yes.
And so fast forward, again, the intention of that could have been actually very, very good. I know there's a lot of Native American communities and spiritualities that it's extremely important for their culture to be connected to Mother Earth and other things. But then you, again, as you mentioned earlier, Tony, you bring in the human element.
Yes.
And that's where things get a little distorted.
I think that's where things kind of go off the rails there.
Yes.
Because, like, I mean, as humans, it kind of that evil sense, like we want power, we want money, we want fame, we want influence. Like that's a natural human thing. Like that's what makes humans corruptible. But it's kind of a fascinating thought going all the way back. And so another thing that I kind of take issue with the Christian religion is they think that to get into heaven or like this eternal resting place, whatever comes next, like you have to accept Jesus Christ into your heart.
Sure.
And so again, that eliminates all of the religions. But like current theory suggests that Homo sapiens, our species, goes back 200 to 300,000 years ago.
Right.
In like Christianity, if we're looking at that timeline, it's a very recent phenomenon.
Yes.
It's essentially like 2,000 years old, right? Because we're 2025 AD. Like in 300,000 years, that's like less than 1% of the time that our species has existed.
Sure.
So to think that this is the right answer and it's just this blip of time on the radar of Homo sapiens and humanity in general, like what about all these people? Like they didn't even have the chance to like
and are they going to eternal damnation because of that? Yeah.
Right. So they just automatically go to hell because they didn't have the opportunity to accept Jesus as a savior.
Right. Absolutely. I love that point too. And just to build on it slightly is that you could argue as playing devil's advocate that when Jesus came, that was the difference maker at that point. Like he came out and did all that. Like his birth and presence changed for that to be the accurate thing. Yeah. But then I would also throw out that when he had been going through his life and in these events, we think that that is the only place on the globe that this could be happening. We fail to understand that there could potentially be other spiritual teachings that are happening alongside of Jesus's existence. Mm-hmm. Because if you listen to the story of the Buddha, that finds his
enlightenment.
Yeah, enlightenment. Mm-hmm. So to dial things back a little bit, I think that the idea of these spiritual teachings, biblical teachings, and all these other teachings inherently positive because we're sinners or born into sin in the Christian context. And we need a all perfect God to try our best to adhere to what that non-emotional God would do and say.
Interesting.
And so that is a way to look at it in a sense of there's productive things here. As you said, 95% is good, right?
Yep.
Like treat your neighbor as you want to be treated.
Right.
Or honor the Sabbath or all these micro teachings. Mm-hmm. That's inherently a good thing to want to use for your character. Stoicism, 100%. Another thing, like it's not so like church oriented, but the study of Stoicism is this very thing. It's overcoming you as the human that has flaws and errors.
Yep.
Now, to get back to what we were talking about, we've kind of laid the groundwork knowing that this is how we kind of see it objectively.
Yep.
I want you to introduce and get a chance for me to hear live kind of what your current thoughts are because we've started off and I want to interject that now.
So I want to say, I'm not trying to like poo-poo Christianity because like I said, 95% of it, I'm all on board with. Like, it's great net positive kind of thing.
Yeah.
And ultimately, I think all the different world's religions, I think we're praying to the same thing. Mm-hmm. Like Christians pray to God, Muslims pray to, I think Muhammad was kind of their Jesus. So I'm blanking on what like their God is, but I think we're all praying to the same thing. I think we're all right. You know what I'm saying? So my problem is saying that other people are wrong. That's the main issue I have. Yeah. Because we're all connected. And I think part of, I mean, we look at what happens in the world today, and it's like the powers that be try to create division and try to pull people apart. And that's what I see when I look at these different world religions. Christianity is not the only one, but there's different religions that say we're right, everybody else is wrong. And that's, again, for me, that's kind of the corruption of man, is saying, like, let's divide these people so we can hold power over them.
Right.
So I think we're all we're connected through consciousness as human beings. And we're all, praying to the same thing. There's more things that connect us that divide us. Very good. If you look at the connections, like the similarities between religions, like we all commune and gather and like pray to whatever, something, we have communion. There's just all these things. There's more things that are similar between all of the religions that divide us.
Right.
We just have different names for them. Like heaven, whatever it is, Hindus. Actually, Hinduism is super fascinating. So I looked this up recently, and so Hindus believe, like, when you die, you go to, I'm blanking on the name of it, but you go to this place, and it's essentially your karmic energy, like how good of karma you have depends on how long you stay there. But if it's a temporary stay.
Okay. So purgatory in some ways.
Yeah, exactly. So like you connect it to Christianity, very similar to purgatory.
Yeah.
Which ironically, I just kind of like learned about through a conversation at Brady's wedding, ironically.
Oh, no
talking
kidding.
to Tori. I knew what purgatory is, but I was talking to her and she was kind of
filling you in.
Yeah, filling me in on like the Christian belief of like what purgatory is and what that means. But very similar to the Hindu belief of like you go to this place temporarily, which is a little bit different. But from there, I think you get reincarnated. And depending on how you live your life, they have like an eternal resting place, I think they call moksha.
Okay.
Which is, it's similar to Christians' heavens.
Right.
Right.
So that's interesting, right?
Right. Right. So again, there's commonalities, there's more similarities.
And what I liked about what you said is let's play the devil's advocate on ourselves. Mm-hmm. If we were all praying to the same God, wouldn't that be nifty?
That's what I'm saying, dude. Right. That's what I'm saying.
Like, not get so focused on our ego, which tells us we have to be right.
Yeah.
Let's be focused on the greater good.
Mm-hmm.
And we could all be praying to the same thing. Now,
I think that's what it is.
With that in mind, I do, and I apologize, but I do want to get into this because I'm chomping at the bit to get into what your belief is. Because, yes, it's like we have laid the foundation. Yes. We're talking around it, and I want to get right to the bullseye.
Okay. So it's kind of a running theory, if you will.
Okay.
Right.
I love how these things start.
Yeah. Like I don't want to say I've drawn any conclusions because, we're both young. We have a whole life ahead of us to, change our ideas, change our minds, whatever it is. But I think the beginning of that conversation kind of starts at the end of life. Like I think death is kind of the beginning of that spiritual life, right?
Yeah.
So I think when our physical bodies die, I think our soul, like our consciousness gets released. And I think it just attaches to the energy we had, the energy we're putting out into the world prior to. So if we're putting out really high vibrational energy like love, empathy, sympathy, and all these positive emotions, and we're spreading that energy into the world, I think our soul kind of takes on that frequency, if you will, of the energy. So then our body dies and our soul gets released, and it's attached to the frequency you've kind of maintained through your physical life.
That's a lot to unpack there.
It's a lot to unpack.
So let me ask you this, because again, I'm hearing this for the first time. So when you say frequency, when you say these type of things, where'd you gather that from? Like, is that just like, I'm trying to think on where you would have like heard that maybe? Because I hear frequency and I think music. Yep. So like,
well, then that's a fucking perfect example. Like when you listen to music, all you're listening to is frequency of vibrations, right?
Yeah.
So it's the same thing. Like music can give you energy, and you listen to music and it's a sad song, and like, how do you know it's sad?
Right.
It's the sound. It's in a minor key. Like it's real, like the frequency you just hear.
The tone of the singer.
Yeah, you register it. Yeah. And so that's kind of the root of that belief is like the energy I put out, like whether it's love, empathy, sympathy, those are very high frequency vibrations, which funny enough, they did a study. Oh gosh, I can't remember who or what it was about, but essentially they put people in, they call them Faraday cages.
Oh my.
Yeah. So it blocks out any sort of like electromagnetic frequencies, and they ask these people questions that would elicit certain responses, and they could actually like quantify, they could measure the vibrational frequency of these emotions. And like love was a very high one, and I think the highest vibrational state was it was like enlightenment, or I think it was enlightenment, but there's one that was like at the top, and that was like the highest vibrating frequency, and that was like, love, all these positive emotions, and then there's hatred, which was real down there. Yeah.
Anger,
Yeah.
depression.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So all these like sad emotions that you are literally like putting out as frequency. Because like again, that study showed that you can literally measure these emotions. Like they're quantifiable.
Which is crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think, we're kind of on a path of bridging the gap between like science and spirituality.
Yeah.
And kind of to go deeper into that. So string theory, it's a quantum physics kind of deal, right? And essentially string theory is once you kind of zoom in on everything, like if we take this cigar, for example, like we zoom in on it, we see the different elements that make the tobacco. We zoom on the elements, we see atoms, we see protons, neutrons, electrons. We zoom in even farther. Essentially, string theory is we zoom in as far as we can go. Mm-hmm. And it's the very core of everything is, and not a literal string, but it's a string vibrating at different frequencies. And so the theory is like how the frequency of vibration determines how that atom or how it expresses itself in the physical world.
Wow.
So I think if we go all the way in on that, everything is literally goes back to energy.
Okay.
So that's why I think the energy that you put out into the world is the energy that your soul is going to kind of attach to once your physical body dies.
Wow. Okay. So just processing that.
Yeah. Tell me your thought. And please, like throughout this conversation, push back. Like if you think I say something that's off base, like, dude, let me know. I want you to like.
Well, the thing that I first want to say is I like how this approach is non-biased to anything that you would have experienced before.
Yep.
Because the foundation that we laid was in this light. Now, there's an interesting book that I've read that would potentially play alongside this that I think I want to mention. So it's a book called Becoming Supernatural by Dr. Joe Dispenza. And what he talks about is at the anatomic level, essentially the atom and how it's made up has the proton, neutron, electron, but that has a charge to it. That's how it essentially an atom operates successfully.
Yep.
So therefore he takes it as from there, everything is made up of atoms. And then the next thing up is like cells and then tissues or muscles and then skeletal. Like you can build it from atoms up essentially.
Yep.
And so what his argument is that if there's energy in the atom, then we're all made of energy.
Right.
And so what he did is he combined his meditative practice to study this from a scientific perspective. And when you are meditating in a certain frequency, as you're alluding to, you literally create an electromagnetic like field around you because you're in a charge.
Yeah.
Because we have positive and negative charge. And so man, this is so interesting. So from there, I think we're on the same thread, and I love where this is going.
Yeah. So tell me what you think. Like that's kind of what I think.
Sure.
In a nutshell.
Yeah. So I think to play into this, I think that heaven and hell, I think that they're states. I don't think they're physical places. And the reason I say that is because there are moments in my life where for just maybe minutes or an hour, there's complete euphoria and everything is so good that like I'm in that such a heightened state that is a heavenly glimpse to me. Now the same is on the other end of the spectrum where there are terrible things that happen on this earth.
Mhm.
And mentally, you can be in that hellish like state. So going back a little bit to what you're saying, and I liked it because I believe that everything is information. So energy being the basis of atoms in the whole universe,
Mhm.
that would mean that basically we have information that is all around of us because it's all frequency, right?
Sure.
And
Yeah.
messages are carried with frequency.
Yep.
And so I think that in the grand scheme of things, because I always like to recommend to people listening, like we always think we're the present day human. Like our life is the most important life because it's our life.
Yep.
But in reality, if you dial back to all the humans who have ever existed, I believe that once you come into your consciousness and you leave your consciousness, you're still existing as energy and information in the totality of the universe.
100%.
And so the next reason why I believe that is because I think that you can achieve a more heaven-like state through some of the practices of creating a better frequency. And your perception is that of good and more heaven-like experiences versus hell. But there's one caveat. I think that God is the energy.
Hold on. All right. When you say God, like paint me a picture. Like what do you see? Like what is God? When you said God is the energy, like what does that look like to you?
Yes. So this is where I wanted to write this down for you before the podcast.
Yes. What do you got?
Okay. So as we have already stated that energy is in atoms and energy is everywhere.
Sure.
Okay. It's everywhere. It's connected to everything and it never is destroyed. It's always moving back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that God is the energy that is.
Yes.
Okay. Now let's take it a step further.
Please.
Right? Okay. So when we are praying to God and we want there to be a God because it's just a thing in human existence where we want to know why we're here.
Of course. Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
So all the ancients, they always would do this meditation in thought, in prayer. Okay. So in one party, we could say they're meditating because there's an actual God that is connecting with them. I think that in some ways that could be true because I don't know all the answers. But on the other side, because they spend time in meditation and they're generating their frequency and God is energy, I think that they're tapping into a more profound experience, and that is God.
Nicholas.
So when they have these godlike moments or guidance for prayer, what you're literally doing is you're generating frequency, and that information has already existed. And so God brings in that energy to your experience.
And you're essentially connecting to that energy.
Exactly.
Dude.
So
I'm 1,000% on board with that.
Yeah.
And like if you look at, so obviously kind of Christianity is the low hanging fruit because that's how we both grew up. Like Catholic guys,
easy way for
we
us
get easy to connect to different teachings, right? So one of the things that I think Jesus was a real person. Like
I do too.
Yeah, I think he was an enlightened being in touch with his own divinity, kind of just like you were talking about, right?
Yes.
And there's parallels to other religions like Hindus. I think it's Vishnu, and there's obviously Buddha with Buddhism. And they're enlightened beings in touch with their own divinity.
Yes.
And I do think we're all, like every single one of us is capable of tapping into that divinity. Because I think God is within us. I think the devil is within us.
Absolutely.
For that matter. Like that's just kind of cosmic balance. Like that's the duality of man.
You're gonna love where I go with this next.
I have
one more point that you're gonna absolutely
nice,
eat up.
nice.
But continue your thought.
No,
here.
and that's kind of the long and short of it is I think God and the devil is in every single one of us, and the one we decide to listen to is kind of the frequency that we attune to. So if you do a lot of shitty things, like it's the kind of the devil's the personification of that sort of energy, right?
Sure.
And God is kind of the the personification of like the good energy.
Yeah.
So I think who we listen to and the decisions that we make as humans determines the energy that we're attached to.
Absolutely. And so you might be looking at us right now and you're thinking, okay, these guys are cracked out or whatever. That's totally fine. But let me throw something in here that'll make you feel some kind of way. So when we pray, we're creating thoughts, like we're
Yep.
manifesting a prayer.
Sure.
So let's say like this would just be an example of me praying, and I'm open to doing this. So I'm sitting here, I'm saying, God, you know that me and Tony are here in this room. You understand what we're trying to do. You understand our heart and our intentions. Give us the words that you decide for us to be able to share in this podcast, so then someone listening might feel your presence, right? That's just a prayer.
Great prayer.
Okay. Because thoughts have energy, and now I'm signaling that into the energy of God. If I'm doing that more frequently and then adding in a biblical text, what do most biblical texts allude to? Some kind of life teaching, right?
Sure.
And if we are to obtain the wisdom in biblical text as God did and as Jesus did, we're not going to be rattled. We're going to be very spiritually connected. We're not going to let the energy of the devil come into us.
Yep.
Because we're in control of our thoughts and in control of our circumstances. And
it.
so that's where I think so many times people look at one or the other, but that to me is the whole point of prayer and connecting to God. And growing up in Catholicism, we had sacraments like Eucharist that would establish a relationship. But the thing that
pause 1 second.
Okay.
Tell me what Eucharist is. I don't know what that is.
Yes, absolutely. So Eucharist is the sacrament of changing the bread and wine to the body and blood of Jesus. And the priest is going through this sacrament saying, basically, I'm consecrating it and I'm taking it from what it wasn't to what it is now.
Sure.
And it emulates in some ways Jesus with the fish and the loaves. Have you ever heard that parable?
I have, yeah.
Yes. So in some ways, it's like a pastor emulating Jesus saying, we're turning this into like a sacrificial, basically, gift. And you go as a believer and you consume Christ in a way that's saying, I'm consuming your body and your blood. And I'm kind of sounds crazy when you put it out like that, but sorry, Dad, if you ever watch this, but from there, you're more in a holy state because you've consumed the body and blood of Jesus Christ.
Love it.
Okay. So that's a sacrament in Catholicism.
And that's Eucharist is like that, the transformation between something to like something holy.
Exactly.
Okay.
And so what we're saying is, though you wouldn't receive communion, you praying and understanding the biblical teaching in the same way is bringing Jesus into your manifested experience.
Yep.
Yes.
Love
so
it.
I love it. I didn't realize we'd be on the same page with this.
No, I know. It's incredible.
Great.
I know. It's the first time we talked about it. We're kind of on the same page. Okay. And the thing you said about praying and why I think, again, both God and devil are inside of us, because when you pray, like if you're praying to God for strength, in my mind, like all you're doing is you're asking yourself to be strong.
You're affirming.
Yeah. Like I need forgiveness. Well, you're just asking yourself to forgive yourself, and you're just, it's all like inside of you. Everything you need is like within you. And I think one of the things where I kind of lose it, and this is just organized religion in general, is like thinking that there are these divine beings, because Jesus, in my mind, he was a human being. He was connected to his own divinity, and he's a human. Like he was flawed like all of us, but he knew that it was within you. So his, the big quote is, the kingdom of heaven is within you. And so when you worship divine beings, you're creating separation between this person and us. So like when you pray and you think Jesus is somebody to pray to, like you're automatically separating yourself, where I think you should be connecting to him and saying, okay, this is what he taught and this is what we should practice or follow.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
It does, but I am going to, I have a different iteration.
Yeah. Lay it on me. I want to hear it.
So I think the reason that is postured in that way is because and this is something I just came to like 2 weeks ago, and I've been mulling on this, so timing is great. Right. Is that if you inherently understand that humans are flawed and that we're sinners at the end of the day, I think when you're praying to God and going to this higher level being, I think that we need to do that because we're flawed. So I think the separation of the divinity is actually a healthy practice, because in divinity, like I'm not looking at Jesus so much as looking at God.
Just in general, sure.
Yep. But to me, I'm calling to God because I know it's he or it or the energy is not corrupted by human nature.
Okay.
So I'm coming to him or the entity saying, I understand that I'm flawed, which is a way of humbling your ego, but then also saying, you're the basis of non-emotional. You're just an entity, right? Like you're just the energy that is pure and that is love, because we can change our states as
Yep.
we talked about.
Yep.
And so to me, I like the idea of calling to something that is divine because I know I'm flawed.
That's pure.
Yes.
And can't be corrupted.
Yes.
Okay.
So I do understand and appreciate though the concept. Well, it's not a concept. It's a fact that Jesus did walk the earth and that he was spiritually divine. Because if you think about these teachings that he did, and you think about these healings that he did, because people will be like, oh, he did all these miracles, and maybe he did, but we highly underestimate our human mind's power when we are so in tune with a said thing. So I think that he was so in tune with the divine that he was able to heal some of these people in ways that they had never even maybe heard of that connection.
That's a fair point.
So
it's a fair point.
Yeah. So like you go to people that have superpowers, and not like literal superpowers, but there's many TV shows out there where people, like, I think of Wim Hof. Like, he's a superhuman guy in the sense that he has all these Guinness Book of World Records of being able to be in the cold water and XYZ, right?
Sure.
But he's doing that because of his belief in his mind.
And he's able to connect to, certain energy.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So, but yeah, that's the only thing I wanted to throw in there, is that I do enjoy separation in this particular context because I want to get away from the human nature that we are, and I want to connect to something that isn't. So,
I get that.
Yeah.
So two things I don't necessarily want to say push back on. That seems strong. So one, inherently thinking we're sinners, I'm not wild about.
Okay.
Because it's our free will. Like, if we choose to sin and we choose to do bad things, like then we are sinners. But it's still up to us. Like, we don't have to.
Sure.
We don't have to do those things. So I think inherently thinking that humans are sinner, we are capable of sin is maybe the way I want to put it.
Okay.
Right. But I totally take your point. Like, I understand the separation that you're talking about. But the problem I have with that is, then it makes us other beings. Like, if Jesus was very in touch with that divinity and very in touch with that energy, that God energy, right? I think we're capable of the same thing. Obviously, and it depends on our practice and how much we actively work towards connecting to that. But I don't like thinking that, because Jesus was a man, like, he was a human being. And I think once we separate ourselves, then we're automatically like disqualifying ourselves of being capable of it being in touch with that divinity.
Sure.
Right.
I'm okay with that 100%.
Right.
I will say the reason I think that we are sinners is because I know that through my own life experience that I have failed myself and others through some behavior or activity that I did in a said moment that was like, oh, I totally fucked that up.
Right. So, but you chose to do that.
I did choose to do that.
Right.
Yes. I think that, though, no matter what, if I choose or not to do it, I think that when it comes down to our like bestial desires, I think at some point we are just going to do off-colored shit because we're fucked up.
Yep.
So this is a great place though, because we have talked about this. I love that we're on the same page.
Yep.
There's a couple things here that, we're discussing that we may not 100% agree on back and forth.
Yep.
But I want to bring in another thing that I think you're going to love.
All right.
Okay.
Lay it on me.
So you talk about the devil and you talk about the states and whatnot. So this is another thing I had highly contemplated. So when we're existing and we get, let's say we talk about personal development, right? So we're trying to obtain skills to live a better life.
Sure.
There's this element of things called self-sabotage. Have you ever heard of self-sabotage?
Sure.
Okay. Yeah. So self-sabotage is essentially certain belief systems subconsciously that prevent us from doing certain things.
Yep.
So these are self-imposed to each individual. So it's very different. So like, let me think of a self-sabotage. So my self-sabotage is like perfectionism. So like, I feel like I'll never be enough. And so my brain will tell me a story that I'm never going to be enough. And so that is going to sabotage me into doing certain behaviors or not achieving certain goals because of self-sabotage. And this is something that is like a studied phenomenon. Like everyone has a form of self-sabotage.
It's the self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yes.
Okay.
So I wanted to point that out just because for someone listening, I'm not like, that's not me just blowing shit out the water because I'm smoking 100%. And drinking. That's
100%.
That's an actual thing.
No, it 100% is.
So furthermore, we go back to the idea of prayer and manifestation of us becoming more divine. I think the devil that portion of our existence is self-sabotage. Because I think that if it is all internal,
Yep.
part of us is good, part of us is bad in terms of our thoughts or our fear
Mm-hmm.
or our behavior.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that to become more spiritually advanced, the battle's within.
Yeah.
So the more you overcome your own fear or your story that you're telling yourself that's not serving you, or diving into vices,
Mm-hmm.
for example, things of this nature, I think that's the devil pulling you in that way. Because if you can never overcome certain issues like drinking or smoking or using pornography or whatever said thing, that to me is you're not spiritually advancing past that stage, and the devil in some way has a grip on your existence.
No, I've loved that take. Like,
Yeah.
I think you're spot on with that itself. But I'm trying to think is your perfectionism.
Okay.
So I don't think that's necessarily evil or like works of the devil, because there's nothing inherently evil about wanting to either better yourself or perfect your craft.
Sure.
I think it's a net positive. Like, you're going to be hard on yourself, which is a good thing.
Yeah.
You know,
Sets
you're going
a
to be,
standard.
you're critical of yourself. So I think there's probably a tipping point, with perfectionism where, on the whole, you're critical of yourself and you're trying to better yourself. So that's what I hear. I'm like, I don't think that's evil or bad. But like the second half of what you just said there, with all of that and kind of the devil like tugging you back, I can get on board with that 100%.
Yeah, because I think that, and that's a fair. That's why I'm glad we're having this conversation, because I hadn't looked at it in that particular light. Um, I'm choosing to put this take in here because of our prior conversation, but also I'm such an advocate of personal development that I think that those that are not, let's say, praying to God as the energy to overcome some of these things, but also not pursuing the best version of themselves.
Yeah.
I think that is the evil.
Yes.
And that is the battle.
Yes.
So thank you for
Yes.
pushing me to that point.
Yeah.
But that's where I really wanted to get to, is that that's my inherent belief. Now, the reason I want that is because I want to be able to pray to a non-human God to be able to help me fight the battle internally.
Sure.
That's my own perception.
Sure.
But to go back to what you were saying with Jesus and reaching his divinity, if you had the self-mastery to do that,
right,
you wouldn't need a God that's external, because you would learn how to overcome your own self-defeating.
100%.
Yeah.
And that's kind of my point just in general, is I think every single one of us are capable of that, and connecting to that energy, connecting to our own divinity, and kind of being in that sort of energy. But it is, and I think it's kind of just the human experience, like our primal urges that pull us back into like out of that state, I guess I'll say. Because, there's certain things, like, just like you said, like our vices, like drugs, alcohol, pornography, sex, like whatever it is, like we've all got them.
Yep.
And I mean, if I'm being totally honest with you, like I don't fully trust somebody until I know their vices.
Yeah.
Because we've all got a little demon in us. We've all got a little devil. Yeah. So the people that are just like, too clean, and it's just like, dude, like there's something I'm not seeing.
Oh yeah.
Because like if I meet someone, I'm like, okay, I know your vices. Like you like to go out and have fun. You like to go out and have drinks, gamble. Like, okay, I know you. I know the devil in you. And like, now I can trust you. But like the people who come off like too clean, there's something that is just, there's something there that I can't see, and I don't trust it.
Yeah, I'm with you on that 100%. Because it's like, come on now, you're not. There's no way. There's no way. The other thing I want to throw in here is the ego, because the ego wants all of the human in us. Yeah, absolutely. The human in us to basically always be right. And I think that self-actualization, I think that is overcoming the ego. Because there's been many times where my ego has told me, like, you don't even need God.
Sure.
And then later on, I'm like, why wouldn't I need God if he's available to me? And so that's one thing I want people to consider too, is that a lot of times we think that we have the right answers or we're perfect enough or our iteration is better than others. But that to me is the human flaw, is our ego and how our ego tells us these things.
Yeah.
And a part of self-actualization is understanding that we are inherently flawed. And by taking that step, you're inching more towards growth in that particular way. So the other thing, like the last thing I'll say on this particular topic is like, I get that the religion serves what most people would need to get through their day-to-day life.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that if they can restructure their mind to an idea like this, I think it is a lot more self-driving, and that should give you hope that you want to pursue this divine version of yourself.
No, I agree.
Because that to me is the human experience. They always talk about growth, right?
Yep.
And overcoming these challenges and building a building. That's going to look different for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
But if we're all in, and this is kind of go back to the heaven thing, if we're all in the pursuit of this
mm-hmm.
and supporting each other,
mm-hmm.
that is going to kill a lot of ego and envy, because we're not trying to better our neighbor. We're trying to build our neighbor.
Yeah.
And that's why I'll always come back to, like, I just think that the earth is the devil's realm, man. I just think that it's full of this, and just such a fun conversation.
So on that same thing, if the earth is the devil's realm, so I'm a huge believer in duality. Like there's a cosmic balance for however bad something is, that's how good it can be. If you look at your own personal developments, you look back and reflect, the most growth you'd have is when you experience the most pain.
Yeah.
Right?
That is true.
The opposite can be true, though. Like, however good something can be is also something bad. Yeah. Equally. And so, for example, on that one, like, I remember talking to somebody about this. Well, how can, like, something good be bad? And we'll look at it, just from we're both athletes. So let's say we're on a team and we've had a ton of success. Like, what's the negative that comes from that, right? And I think it's just, you got to look deeper, and like, you get a little complacent. You're not working as hard. Like, that's the negative that comes from too much success. So I think whatever experience we have in the world, whether it be positive or negative, there's that equal and opposite reaction. Yeah. And I think that's like Newton's third law, is like every action has an equal and opposite reaction.
Yeah.
And I truly believe that holds true for just like the universe in general. So however good something is, there's the equal amount of bad that comes in. Something equally, something really bad, you're going to experience a lot of good that comes from it, whether it's personal growth, whether it's evolution, whatever it is. You're going to have that balance, and you're going to have that duality.
Yeah. And that might be the synonym to me in saying the earth is the devil's realm, because
exactly. So if that is possible, then it's possible the earth is God's realm too.
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
Well, so in that particular light, that would be quite welcoming and be grounded in the theory that we were talking about earlier, is that we are in control of our pursuit of being as divine as we possibly can, which is a beautiful thing.
Very.
So I'm shocked, man. I didn't know where we were going to go.
I know it.
I think it's such a cool place for us to just start this podcast out, because again, this is it's just a different take than what most people
100%.
And the other thing too that I want to throw out here that I didn't get to, but I've reminded myself of, is when we were talking about energy and thoughts being energy, and praying and meditating. That's where I think that when you're praying and when you are like in that state, well, I guess I should break it into two different things. When you're praying and you see coincidence in the universe after, because there's a situation recently where I had prayed with a coworker, and that later that week, there was something that I talked to someone, and something came up in that conversation, just out of respect for their name and likeness. I'll keep them out of this. But I remember leaving that conversation and going, dude, that's just too coincidental, you know?
Yep.
And then also when you are in the shower or you're praying or whatnot, and you're in that Zen state, and you get an idea or a solution for something. Yeah. That to me is God working through that information and that frequency connection.
Sure.
And that is something that I'm in love with.
Totally fair. Well, and that goes back to what you were saying with the RAS, the reticulating activation system. Like you're connecting to these things, right?
Yeah.
Like you're I don't want to to say manifesting. That sounds too, I don't
Too
know.
woo-woo.
But a little bit, but you're connecting to these energies. And so like the energy you're emitting is the energy that will like match you in the universe. Right. So if you're like, poo-pooing yourself and like putting yourself down, like that's going to be your reality.
Yeah.
Like eventually your thoughts become your reality. Your thoughts become your actions. Your actions are kind of like what you put out there, and that's what's going to come back to you.
Right.
Yeah. So I think it's full circle. Like that's what it is.
And why would these spiritual teachings have phrases like "as a man thinketh, so he is"?
Right.
Or for Jesus, right? I am the way, the truth, and the light. Yep. So this divine reach is the way that we need to pursue.
Right.
So that's,
and if you we want to talk about our own personal divinity, like if you go back to the Bible, the Bible itself is kind of a fucking ball of worms.
Yeah. So this is a great bridge into the next phase of conversation. So one thing that we wanted to discuss, and if you are someone that does believe in the Bible and all that fun stuff, and now I'd recommend you maybe turn us off, or we might be bothering you here. So just want to give you forewarning. So one thing that we agree upon is the history of the Bible itself. While containing many texts that are inherently good, and we've always stood on business on this, but there is a problem, and that is humans put this together, which means that humans also edited what is supposed to be in the Bible.
1000%.
And so when we look at it through that lens, we wonder, of those people who did it, why did they put certain ones in and certain ones not? And who are they to decide that as well? So in particular, let me just really open us up here. When you think about this concept of the Bible itself, certain books in, certain books are not, someone may not even known that that is actually the case, that the Bible has been iterated over centuries. Yeah. So just go ahead and dive right in on this, on your thoughts of like maybe how that has come together, the corruptness with that a little bit. But then if there's any particular books that haven't been put in there, let's maybe discuss that as well.
Sure. Okay. Well, the first reason why I started looking into the Bible, because I would have these conversations with people who are very Christian, and I would ask like, why do you believe that? And they're like, well, it says it in the Bible. So I was like, okay, well, let's look at the Bible then.
Right. Naturally.
Right.
Let's just understand.
Right. It's because I'm trying to validate like this religious text and like, is it accurate? Is it not accurate? Like, where do we fall on that? And so I looked into how it was created, when it was created as a factor as well. And so it took, I'm pretty sure it took, if I'm remembering correctly, like hundreds of years to like get to the kind of final edition of the Bible, if you will.
Sure.
Right. And this was a lot of New Testament. I feel like a lot of New Testament is kind of where I fall off on.
Okay.
And those books like Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, all that, like they were written at best at the earliest decades after Jesus's life. Like those actual texts themselves at best were written, and then they were compiled and made into the Bible hundreds of years after that.
Yes.
So the timing is a factor, to say the least.
And let me chime in just a touch here, Tony.
Yes,
yes. I want us to not be emotional about the Bible in this story. This is the biggest point that I want to make, is that if this were any other thing, this would be a bit suspicious in terms of the author, or the subject matter is a better way of saying that. Yeah. Being talked about decades or hundreds of years post.
1,000%. So and we're talking 2,000 years ago.
Right.
So we look at a decade now and it doesn't seem that long, because we have video, we have text, we have all of these things, where back then, like a lot of the texts were just like anecdotal. Like they were just stories. They were just writing them down.
Right.
Like,
and they didn't have a fucking, well, they probably had things to write on back then. But anyway, it wasn't as legitimized as maybe what it is. And it's also storytelling.
Yeah, that's a big part of it.
I mean, our whole culture as Homo sapiens sapiens is storytelling. So anyway, I just wanted to point that out, because I don't want people to get emotional just because we're saying the Bible.
Right.
We're just being objective to this idea of this book coming together.
We'll call it a historical text.
There we go.
Yeah.
Yes.
Trying to validate that.
Yeah. Anyways, back to what you were mentioning.
No. So on that same thread, it was put together by religious, priests, but politicians were involved. And like, you know, we look at our political system today, and like once politicians are involved, you're like, all right.
If Trump decided,
and yeah, like if these politicians were like, okay, we're gonna decide like this religious book that everyone's gonna believe verbatim, right? And so I believe a lot of what is said in there is probably true.
Yeah, could be,
right? But my problem with it, and I was alluding to this earlier with how it was corrupted by men, is these people, these religious people, which, you know, if we want to look at the Catholic religion and the Vatican, like
that's the best
powerful organization.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And then we take that, and then we take these political figures that were weighing in on this, you know, the emperors of the time. What was their prime like motivation? They wanted power, they wanted influence, they wanted to control people.
Yes.
And so again, that's the 5% where the devil's at work there.
Exactly.
Right.
So we're not giving up on humanity, but we are being honest and real about what could have happened. Now, this is a beautiful interjection, if you don't mind, for me to dive in on something. So
Please, do it.
I had mentioned that in tribes, we needed a universal God, or gods plural, to pray to. Yep. So if we're talking about the evolution of our species, why wouldn't they take the same idea and practice and build on it and make it better?
1,000%.
So instead of just having 10 people in your tribe, what happens when you have 5,000 people in your tribe? Well, obviously, we know that now to be cities and towns and metropolitan areas. Yep. So if I'm a leader and I see these things and I go off and I'm just trying my best, right? And I'm just sharing the word of God in this particular context, I'm going to get people that want to listen. However, as a human, in my personal opinion, I'm flawed. And what if I want a little bit on the side? What if I want a little bit more influence and power? 5%. And then I go, hey, you know, this has been great, me sharing these teachings, but you got to pay some taxes from here on out so we can be funded for this wonderful endeavor. Again, not the worst idea in terms of trying to do it for the right good. But then, as we know, the slippery slope is in fact a slippery slope. So all I'm saying is that we can give benefit of the doubt, or we can be pretty real and say most of these powerful figures were likely using it for influence over the people that were in their area.
1,000%.
And we're not going to get their influence through politics, but there's one thing that everyone believes in, and that is some kind of religion.
Yes. And if you take it back even further, like pre-religions, like we talked about earlier, like humans are probably anywhere from 200 to 300,000 years old, right? So you're a high up figure in our society. Nick, why the hell is it raining? Why the hell did we get hit by a tornado? Tell me why. Why did this happen?
The gods.
The gods did it.
They're
like,
displeased with us.
Yeah. And that was the answer to a lot of questions that we couldn't answer. Like now, obviously, we know why exactly all of that stuff happens.
Yes.
But like way back in the day, it's God, man. Like he's pissed off right now.
Right.
And I think that's kind of how that started. And they probably, you know, maybe weren't far off. They had like the God or like a higher being, which is probably accurate, you know, as we sit today.
Yes.
But again, I think that's how a lot of it really started. And so even Christianity, so it's interesting. So there's one of the big religions, and you've probably heard of it, was pagans, right? So the pagan religion, they had a lot of parallels to the Christian religion. So if you had to convert these pagans to Christianity, what's one of the things you would do? Like you would have certain elements of their religion into this one and get them to be like, see that like this is the same. So one of the interesting things, like Jesus's resurrection, and why I think a lot of Jesus's miracles in the Bible were more parabolic. Like it's just like hyperbole. It's not like a literal account, but it's, you know, look at a fairy tale. Like there's a fun story, like there's a little bit of magic and this and that. And there's like a fun little, you know, lesson at the end.
Yes.
So I think a lot of his miracles were hyperbole, like they were just, good stories to teach a lesson. And then you can connect that to these other religions. Like if you look at Jesus's resurrection, there's a fascinating, I don't want to call it a documentary film, that made parallels between Jesus's story in certain celestial events. So I'm trying to think if is it the winter equinox or is it solstice? When the sun is at the lowest is like December 22nd.
I think it's the solstice.
Is it the solstice? Okay. So like these ancient people, like thousands of years, like how did we tell time? We told people stories. It was just oral. We weren't writing things down at the time. So we passed things down through stories.
Yes.
Right. And that pagan religion, like I said, there's a lot of celestial events that align with, what Jesus and how we know it. So like the sun was the lowest part of the sky in like December 22nd-ish. And it stays there for 3 days. And on December 25th, the sun starts to rise. And it's lit sun, like son of God, Everyone prays to the sun because the sun brings life. It brings everything. So everyone used to pray to the sun because pre-religion, like we didn't know anything else. Like this is what the sun is what brought things up. So they started praying and we looked at the stars, we looked at the sky, and there's a lot, I'm trying to remember specifically, but there's a lot of parallels to certain celestial events and how these religions kind of formed and how these stories formed. Because in my mind, a lot of I don't think it's literal accounts. It's just hyperbole. Mm-hmm. So like Jesus is born, and I think it's on Easter where I think it's the highest point in the sky, maybe. And then it starts, or no, there's more daylight on the earth than like night.
Sure.
I think it's an equinox maybe. But there's certain stories that align with like equinoxes and solstices, and it's I think a really big origin of paganism and just religion as general is just using these stories on how to tell time,
right?
Like what time of year it is, like here's what we're going into next.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of like what the pagans believe. So like if you were a priest or a politician, you're like, okay, like this is our religion. Like, how do we get these people to convert to our religion? And so we'll put elements of their religion, of their story into ours to make it an easier transition. Right.
And then if that said community is not as intelligent as we are or literate as we are, we can morph this in a way that is very believable.
Right.
Because of one thing. We want power and we want all this other stuff.
Right.
Now, I know someone listening to this might think, okay, you're really just saying all these things are parables, but be mindful of the power of storytelling. Storytelling is not a bad thing. It's very good.
Yep.
And we needed it. We needed it.
That's literally the only way we could bring on these things that we know
at
that time.
Again, if you're thinking we're discounting this for the sake of not being fans, that's not true at all. What we're saying is that there are some core functionalities of societies that they needed to operate successfully, and it just so happens that their understanding might not have been to what ours is today for them to make sense of it. And so it's okay if that actually is the case versus being so loyal to a said religion because you're not able to comprehend outside of what the teachings are.
100%.
Yeah. So
100%.
I will add on to this in the sense that we're both big Graham Hancock fans.
Yes.
And a lot of ancient civilizations really were devout on astrology.
Yes.
And there's a reason for this, a practical reason in terms of you need to know that there are different seasons and different times throughout the year. But with that, there's a spiritual essence in that we're all connected to, again, the universe of the earth, the sun, the moon, and the stars, and all of that is interconnected. So for some culture to think, okay, the god of sun is going to treat us well, and they didn't know that the solstice or equinox was going away for 3 days.
Yep.
Another example of this, and this is me slightly on a tangent here, so bear with me,
please,
is Christopher Columbus when he went to take over the Aztecs. What he did is he came to them, and basically he knew the equinoxes, I think they are. That might be the thing in the podcast that we'll come back to, is just like figuring out, is it solstice or
Yeah,
is it
yeah.
equinox,
There's
whatever.
both, obviously. Yeah.
But anyway, so he knew this, and he came to them and he goes, my God is going to turn the sky red in 3 days if you don't abide by what I say. And he knew this was going to happen. And so it did happen. And so he ended up obviously having a lot of success in doing that.
Sure.
If you like Christopher Columbus, folks, do your history. Is a terrible, terrible.
Yeah, it really was.
It was horrible. Not someone we should celebrate.
No.
But anyway, I digress. So the origins, if that is the case, which is highly likely because of the study of astrology and making sense of storytelling, that doesn't mean we throw the baby out with the bathwater. Because again, there's a lot of very good things that come from these teachings, but we may not need to anchor ourselves so much in there, knowing human beings are the ones that put this all together.
Yes.
And then lastly, or if you have another point.
No, please. I'm just agreeing. I think
because I do want
on with that.
I do want to bring in something that is going to push the token even further.
Okay.
But I think that it's important. So one thing that we've talked about in the past is the Book of Enoch. Is it Enoch?
Yes. The Book of Enoch. Yes.
Okay. So this is a biblical text that was on purposely, basically exiled from the Bible.
Yes.
Not put in there, which is odd. Why would it not be put in there?
When it was discovered too, it was when the Dead Sea Scrolls were discovered, which is kind of a whole thing itself. But
yes,
I think the Bible, was the Bible out when they discovered the Dead Sea Scrolls? I'm pretty sure it was, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So the interesting thing, the Dead Sea Scrolls were found after the Bible was written, and I think it's the book of Isaiah particularly, where they looked back. They had it, right? And they discovered this, which was like thousands of years older. And like the book of Isaiah was almost verbatim, like through all the translations, like it was almost dead accurate.
Right.
And this was found at the same time as the book of Enoch.
So interesting.
Right.
Interesting.
Right.
We're not drawing conclusions, but again, we can be, pragmatic and understand. Yeah. So
tell me about the book of Enoch.
Yes. So the book of Enoch, this is where shit gets a little bit wild because the book of Enoch includes a couple elements of things. So the first one is that there are these watchers, and these watchers had this angelic presence that they came to Earth, and they essentially breeded with us Homo sapiens. Okay. And they did that to be able to not only make themselves like us in their image, but also just in general, if you're a culture trying to come into a new planet, if you will, you're going to want to make hybrids of who you are, so you can control them or you can help them.
Right. And I think they're called like the Nephilim. Is that what they're?
I think so. Yes, absolutely.
Yep. Okay.
So these watchers are coming to us and basically making these hybrid humans. And so the reason this is important is because there's always been this question on how we evolved from apes.
Yes.
And so now you're like, holy shit, why is he bringing this in here? So there's the stoned ape theory, which is the apes eating mushrooms and evolving, which is a great thing to talk about.
Yep.
Right.
Love that theory.
But what could be more outlandish, but also potentially accurate, is that there was in this case, divine intervention on how we evolved so quickly into becoming advanced in our
intelligent,
species.
conscious species. Yeah.
So again, we said earlier that parables is within the Bible. A lot of it could be parables. So this could be a parable in some ways, right? We have to remain consistent with our arguments.
Yep.
But if there is any truth to it, that is a fascinating concept. And
it really is.
The other thing I'll throw out here is, and this is so good for my ADHD brain, you're familiar with the Anunnaki and that theory?
Somewhat. Enlighten me. I've heard of it. I don't know too much about it, but
this
please,
is a lot more far-fetched, but I will
enlighten me.
I will do it. So the Sumerian texts is where we get into this.
Okay.
So the Sumerian texts essentially state that there was a civilization called the Anunnaki that were gods that were far above us. Similar to Watchers, they came to Earth and they were here to give us, to make us in their image, but also to give us technologies that we don't understand or that helped us build. So the classic example of this is the Egyptian pyramids. So a lot of people.
Hold on. Are you drawing a parallel from the Nephilim and the Anunnaki?
So this is where I wanted to flirt with it. I'm not saying that this is accurate, but I wanted to use this as a side example.
Sure.
So I think that the Anunnaki is a more far out example than the Watchers, but
Hey everyone, I just wanted to pop in here real quick. So as you can tell, the video actually cuts off on my phone and you're just listening to audio as the podcast is wrapping up. Super sorry about that, but when we were filming for the first time, I did not realize the storage capacity on my phone. And so it recorded like the first probably 2/3, maybe even more than that, 3/4 of the podcast. So no worries. If at this point you want to cut out, totally fine. But we do still talk about some very interesting things in the last maybe 20 minutes. But you'll have to just listen to the audio clip. So let's get back to the show.
Want the two to coexist. Mm-hmm. So the Anunnaki, they come here essentially cross DNA with Homo sapiens in a similar light.
Yep.
And that is what creates us as we know today. Now, they needed to do that because they needed workers, because the Anunnaki were the gods.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And you're like, holy shit, Nick, this is in left field. But
well, I feel like so you look at Egyptian hieroglyphs, there's always like these different beings that are depicted in these hieroglyphs.
I was just going to go there. So first off, why would we document something if we were making it up like that accurately? Mm-hmm. Right. So we're all, as a culture, we're all just going to document that there's these larger beings that aren't our size. Mm-hmm. That seems pretty weird.
Right.
Why would we do that as humans today?
Right.
Okay. Just a thought.
Yep.
So then from there, because they mutated our DNA, they had us as workers, but also within that encryption of our DNA mixing, this is why we have a desire to pray to God. Because it was hardwired in our system at this time.
Ooh, I like that.
So now let's get back to the Book of Enoch. So again, it is in some ways could be looked at literal or could be looked at in parable. Sure. But there seems to be a handful of these various texts and theories that at some point as Homo sapiens we were messed with.
Ooh, I like that.
To advance our culture at that time. That. So then you talk about places like ancient Egypt.
Yep.
You talk about Göbekli Tepe. You talk about the Aztecs, right?
Yep.
So there's a lot of these ancient civilizations that were super far advanced to what we know them as today.
Yes.
Now, we could have come up with that, but how are we going from apes to creating these crazy structures?
Yep.
And it's one of my favorite conversations.
I fucking love it. Okay. So there's
I've talked
two
a lot.
things.
Please go ahead.
No. I'm piggybacking right off you. So there's two things that I want to mention. So, I wish I could remember the dude's name. I'm blanking on it. Doesn't matter. Listen to a podcast of him, and he's kind of likes to talk about these same things. He's got a couple of books, but I'm blanking on what they are. But essentially, he came to the conclusion that scientists look at our DNA structure and they compared it to the rest of nature's evolution. And essentially they don't have an explanation other than outside intervention of how we were able to evolve like this. Because there's a certain chromosome that doesn't match the rest of nature. And like they can't explain it other than outside intervention of how we came to be and evolved at what we are. So that like aligns perfectly with, we look at the Book of Enoch and the Nephilim or the Anunnaki, and there's some sort of external intervention in our DNA that I think gave us this consciousness.
Yes.
And like, if we look at ourselves as a species, every species has like an evolutionary trait. And I think ours is intelligence. And a big one is the ability to manipulate our surroundings. Because if you look at other animals, none of them, some build nests, some build things, but none of them really manipulate their surroundings very much. And we're masters at this. Like, look at all we've done. But it's funny that you say that because there is, I need to send it to you, but essentially they came to the conclusion that our chromosomal structure was intervened with at some point. Yes.
And I love that so much.
Yes.
Now, you did have a second thing that you mentioned that you might want to add. If not, I'll take it from where we are right now.
What was it? I kind of lost myself on that one. There was a second thing. I can't remember.
Okay.
Keep going.
So just dabbling in this whole concept here. So if for some reason there was a biblical text that was accurate, as the book of Isaiah was accurate, and we would have been messed with in some way, shape, or form, this does explain a handful of things.
It explains a lot of things. It connects a lot of dots.
It really
and that
does.
actually, I remember my second point I was going to make is, like you talk about Göbekli Tepe and all these ancient structures, there were similar structures throughout the world. And there's no way at the time that they were made, there's no way we had the ability to get to these places as human beings. So how were we able to have similar structures and technologies on opposite ends of the earth?
Right.
Like that answers that question.
I mean, it very well could, is that there
Right.
was a distribution of information that allowed us to be able to do that.
Exactly.
Yes. And the thing that I really appreciate about this, because you might be listening to this or you guys might be watching this and you're like, bro, like you all need to chill out.
Yeah, I know.
But I think it would bring me more peace in some ways to know that that would in fact be the case.
Yeah.
Because then it explains why we're so hardwired to find purpose in our life.
Sure.
And it was because it is in our DNA that we would want to call to the Anunnaki. We would want to call to the Watchers for our guidance and our spiritual understanding.
100%. And it explains why we're constantly like innovating. We're constantly like building. We're constantly like pushing the limits of our capabilities.
Right.
Like, that would make a lot of sense. And for the people who think it's crazy, prove it wrong. Like, how can you?
Right.
Like, we don't know the answer.
No one knows the answer, which is awesome.
Right.
I think it makes it even more fun.
100%. So, one of the things, and this is just kind of goes back to like religion, everything in life. Are you familiar with Occam's razor?
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever heard of that? Okay, so Occam's razor essentially states that this is a really simplified version of it, but the simplest explanation is most often the correct explanation. Like the explanation when there's competing hypothesis, like if you don't know the truth and there's competing hypothesis, the one with the least amount of assumptions is most often incorrect. That's what Occam's razor is.
In some ways, the most plain truth.
Yeah,
like
essentially, because they're like the most simplified, the least amount of variables possible is most likely the correct, or the at least the hypothesis you should start with.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think that says a lot. Like if we just try to simplify it, because there's, to answer these questions of consciousness and like this connectedness and all of that, if we inserted this crazy, albeit I'd be the first to say it's fucking nuts, of like the Anunnaki or the Nephilim or whatever, it like if you insert that and just think it's true, like it answers a lot of questions.
Yes.
I'm not saying it is true, but I'm just saying like there's a lot of kind of moving parts where if there was some sort of, we'll call it divine intervention or external intervention into like our species, that answers a lot of questions. That connects a lot of dots and gives us answers of why we are.
It's a domino effect.
Right.
And that isn't to say that both of those things can't coexist.
Mm-hmm.
The divine intervention of this thing could have been the starting pillar. That doesn't mean that Jesus of Nazareth didn't exist. He did exist.
Oh yeah. It doesn't disprove that at all.
Exactly.
Right.
And I like to combine the two together because we're talking about our story as a collective whole.
Yep.
And again, we get so short-sighted into me and I'm alive, you're in your life. Our lives are most important because we're alive in this present moment.
Yep.
That's not how history works.
Yep.
That is not how history works.
And that's exactly why like Christianity, religion itself is just such a small part of like our known reality. Like it's this much, but like we've existed for this long.
Right. Without it.
Right.
In an organized fashion.
Yep.
Yes. So, yeah, that is, I didn't know we were going to get quite to that point, but I'm so excited we went into that because I think it's such a fun idea to think that there was something of this nature. And again, I'm open to the possibility that that's the truth. And if it's not, that's totally fine.
Right.
But I just think that to be able to understand the inner workings of all of this stuff, and we started off on this podcast talking about the kind of similarities and differences of religion and spirituality. And so we've traveled a long way, but also our human story has traveled a long way.
100%.
And so, we're just out here kind of, taking shots at it. We do have other talking points that we're going to get to. So are there any other thoughts or questions that you have on this kind of first opener of religion and spirituality before we get into our next phase?
Well, it depends. Like, if you want to talk about ancient Egypt and go down that rabbit hole, like, we could definitely talk about that.
Yes.
But in regards, yeah, okay, fair. Like, in regards to spirituality, religion, we can close the book.
Yeah, that was a wonderful start to the podcast.
Yeah.
Actually, as I say this, I'm going to throw in one more thing.
Yeah.
And it's
sign us off.
Super hypocritical of me to do this, but I'm going to do it anyway. So there have been claims and evidence that there used to be giants that walked the earth.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So and this is in the Book of Enoch, by the way.
Oh, okay. I apologize. I did miss this point, but the reason I bring this up is because if there are actual, like, I can't remember if it's like a legitimate fact or not, but there's been many articles and newspaper ads about like these large human bones that have been found. Okay.
Yep.
Now, the Watchers or the Anunnaki or any one of these could have been these quote unquote giants that were a part of our species.
Yep.
The other thing I like to throw in there as we're a species as any other animal is, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so we've existed for quite some time. Now, if we're going back into the prehistoric ages, which I know is far past our history, there were creatures that would have walked the earth that are far larger than what they are today.
Okay.
So the megalithic creatures.
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
So if we're
but non-Homo sapien type creatures.
Yes.
Okay.
Non-Homo sapien.
Okay.
Now, if all of those descendants of different animals had grown in size or shrunk in size due to scientific things that we're not going to get into, I think it's available to believe that our Homo sapien nature, whether us or an external factor, would have correlated with the size difference of other creatures that would have existed at one point.
Sure.
And so I think that knowing that even in today's world, the tallest person in the world is like 8'11" or something like that. Which
8'11"?
Or maybe 7'11". My bad.
Okay,
my
I
bad.
can see that. I was like 8'11" is damn.
My fault. But anyway, that is considered a giant to us.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so if that's only one person that ever reaches that, I'm not saying there was a community of giants, but I do think that when we're designing the pyramids and when we're finding some of these skeletal structures, I do believe that there were a handful of giants that would have actually walked the earth. I think it's a natural course of action to build some of the things that were built.
And just look at like what you said. If we look at the spectrum of what we know now, like let's take that person who's 7'11" and let's look at them through the perspective of the shortest person. We'll say non little person, but like the shortest kind of normal human being. Like let's say you're like 4'11". I'm sure there's people that are shorter, but if you look at that person who's 7'11", that's a giant to you.
Right.
And if we're talking about thousands of years ago and you're like this kind of like, obviously on average, people are much shorter. And that's just the spectrum of our species DNA, like super short and like super massive. Like if you watch strongman competition, you look at Brian Shaw, the dude's like 6'9", like 400 pounds. The guy is a massive human being.
He's a giant.
Yeah, and if you're on this end of the spectrum of being super short and small, if you see him and you're thousands of years ago and there's no, like, there's not really any documentation and you just see this like person, you're like, oh my God, that's a literal giant. So I think even in the spectrum of our species DNA, like that's not out of the question.
Yeah. And when we say giants, I'm not talking about someone walking around that's like 25 foot tall.
Right.
I'm just talking about more able-bodied, larger humans that in some ways could have helped the Anunnaki or the Watchers build some of these ancient sites. So that was the last thing I wanted to throw out there because I do want it to be known that I do believe that giants did in some ways walk the earth in the relative sense of giants walking the earth. So yes, we're going to, no pun intended, close the book on this particular conversation. And there are many other things that we're going to get to in this podcast. So thank you for bearing with us on part one. We'll get into part two. So,
hey, y'all. Hope you enjoyed the show. If this was a conversation that you found either really fun, really crazy, or anywhere in between, still feel free to share it Right now, it's just a YouTube link. So if you go to my YouTube channel or go to my website, you have the capacity to do that, to share it. Also, if you haven't already, if you could subscribe to my YouTube channel, that would be huge. That is really what supports the show, and also will support the future dream of being able to do this full time, along with some other things. So thank you so much for listening in and living a little life with me on the Life with Nick podcast. Until next time.